What's up everyone, I'm VenomousStare. Today I have a Zerg versus Protoss for you today on the map Daybreak. The two players are extremely good, they are Korean and both of them have won a major LAN in Korea. In the bottom left of Daybreak we have Dark, the red Zerg. He won an SSL. He's known for his Overlord speed. I've seen in almost every single game of Dark versus Protoss, he gets this Overlord speed very early on, and it basically means that he can't be caught off guard. His opponent is a guy who also has won an SSL, but has also won a GSL Classic. And Classic is a very well-rounded player, and he is someone who I've noticed does a lot of builds that involve him having these high-tech, micro-based army compositions. And he's not someone who does a lot of random cheese, although he does have cheese in his arsenal, so... In my opinion, the scariest kind of Protoss player to play as Zerg is someone like SOS, who is a very good Korean player a lot of you are probably familiar with. And the reason SOS is so good is because SOS is the kind of Protoss player who, like Combat X, will do just ridiculous, ludicrous, dedicated cheeses that you would never expect a player that good to do. But SOS is a guy who can back it up with exceptional macro play, just like Classic. But Classic's not the kind of guy to cannon rush, you know, 2 different bases and then like proxy Void Ray or something. Like SOS is the kind of guy who will just pull out all the stops of ridiculousness and abuse you. Classic is more of a solid player. He's not necessarily someone who exclusively plays macro like Rain, the Protoss player who retired and is actually playing Brood War now, but Classic, in my view, probably is going to go for a fast tech build here. He'll probably make it in the main base because Zerg can almost always be trusted to send their first Overlord to your natural. And oftentimes on Daybreak they'll put them up on those little platforms. And the reason they put them up on these platforms is because you have to have high ground vision to kill the Overlord. Really not that big of a deal in Legacy of the Void because of the Mothership core. But in Herd of the Swarm and in Wings of Liberty, these platforms are amazing. If you're a Zerg newbie, very quickly, that's a high ground. This little area is a high ground. There is a platform right here. There's another one right here. And there is another one by the 4th base. So as Zerg, just as a newbie tip, you want to send your Overlords to places where they can't be targeted by anything on the ground. So what that means is sticking them up on little high ground spots or putting them out over in the dead space of the air. A lot of people know that, but you need to have your first couple Overlords in a position to get you scouting information in the mid game. And we see that, of course, Dark has that. He has one by the natural, which if you don't know why he has it here, because you want to be able to see when your Protoss opponent takes their 2nd and 3rd gas. Dark has gotten his trademark Overlord speed, so he can just fly around like Speed Racer in the Protoss base infinitely. You know, he could have had both his Overlords in a bad location and still gotten complete scouting information. That's kind of the whole point of getting this early Overlord speed, is Dark knows exactly what's coming, and that's DT drop. So how do I know it's DT drop? Like if you're playing at home and need to know how? Well, Robo with a very quick Twilight and then the Dark Shrine indicates that he's going to make a Warp Prism and try to harass with DTs. So what is Dark's response? Well, he's going to get a Spore and a Spine at his 3rd. He is going to get a Spore at his natural, of course, and a Spore in his main. He's going to do a Ling drop too. This is the advantage of opening with such a quick Overlord speed. And Dark kills 3 probes. He's going to evacuate with most of his drones. And while that is going on, The attempted DT drop happens, but Dark scouted it because of his quick overlord speed, and he has everything in place to defend. Spore Crawler is ready, of course. The thing about this DT drop is if the Zerg is not ready, they don't have detection, it can deal game-ending damage if you have a DT at each base. But if it fails and they have detection, you just warp in 2 more DTs, make your first set of DTs an Archon, and then you can walk around with this Warp Prism with 2 Archons in it, and of course Archons do a lot of splash and bonus damage to Bio. And look at that, boom, the Queen just gets popped like a sniper bullet. And Dark is going to retreat in his mineral line. He has a nice little spine, and he had the Banes, which were brilliant, because obviously if a Dark Templar swipes on a Baneling, that's not going to be good for the Dark Templar. Little Baneling action here in the main of Classic, and boom, it's going to get... Let's see how many workers. The first 2 get 6, the next 2 get 4, so 10 total die. And that means that the Protoss player Classic is suddenly behind in workers. Classic is teching into Templar Archives, which is interesting because he already has Dark Shrines, so if he wants to make Archons, I don't know why he just wouldn't do it with the Dark Templar. I guess he wants to make Speed Zealots, that would be my guess. He's going to start researching Speed at some point and then make a Zealot combo, because the reason I say that is, if you don't know, whenever you go a Speed Zealot combo, you're going to float a lot of gas, obviously, because Zealots just cost minerals. So oftentimes the way someone will complement that is make High Templar to go along with it, because High Templar pretty much costs exclusively gas. A Forge is coming up for Classic. Dark has a pretty damn good economy. He's starting Baneling speed. He's going to do some multi-prong aggression. Classic sees it with the Warp Prism and fires up some overcharge at the 3rd, but it's all a ruse. And look at this, Dark's going to drop Banes into the main, and Classic does not have Blink, and look at that! Ooh, the workers get so low, but with only 1 Baneling, they don't die. And of course, they're going to mine at the same rate, almost dead as they would at full health, so... Dark almost kills a lot of probes again, and feigns a drop there. This isn't even a real dropper lord. Nice use of hallucination. Protoss don't use this enough in Legacy of the Void to scout. The reason you do a Phoenix is because of how fast it is. Classic intelligently walling in here, even though he didn't have a Zealot initially. He doesn't let Zerg run his Lings in, and he kills a few Lings with Force Field, but so important to always be watching your front door and not let a bunch of Lings get in your base, because that can deal game-ending damage. Ooh, the Warp Prism died and I missed it. I'm gonna have to go back. So we had the little Bane drop over here. And let's go to units, Warp Prism. So the Warp Prism flied up here for whatever reason, and the Bane drop occurred. And then Classic is going to try to start flying it over on the north side again. But Dark has 3 forward Queens out here spreading creep out towards this 4th base, because he knows that if Classic pushes, it'll probably be around this area. And look at this, Classic just going to fly his Warp Prism right into these Queens. And the Queens have so much range where there's nothing Classic can do to escape. Look at that. The Archons are going to do some damage here because they have a lot of health and a lot of splash. They're going to kill 2 Queens and maybe some drones, because every time they shoot these Queens, they're going to splash onto some drones. And an Immortal here is making a case to deal with this base, the 4th, but the Lings are obviously going to kill it. But 11 drones went down. So even though that Warp Prism died, got kind of caught out, Classic almost evens up the worker killed count. Classic is going to tech into a mortal charge lot, it appears, and then with this extra gas he's going to make Archons. Archons are really, really good against Zerg, especially once you get +3 attack. And they're extremely hard to deal with as Zerg, especially once you have a charge lot meat shield, because the charge lots provide such a sturdy kind of lineman positioning and advantage to your Archons, where even if Zerg has Roaches or Lings or Hydras, if they fight straight up with charge lots, they're going to die, and there was a little baneling drop attempted that got snuffed out by overcharge there. But if we look at Classic's army, it's a nice little mix. He has a couple sentries, he has archons, stalkers, charge zealots, and he's made more zealots, and he's going to make another archon. So Classic's just continuing to produce off of 3 bases, making immortals too, of course, and Dark is actually making, it looks like, mass Hydra Ling. And he started +3 Carapace. Dark has a severe upgrade advantage. He's 2-1. And he's making a lot of banelings. Wow, 12 banelings on the way. And Dark has 154 supply. He might go for a big mid-game attack here. He might do another drop play while he attacks. That is something he is fond of. And Classic did not research Storm. He made that Templar Archive, but really has just been making High Templar to try to make Archons. He hasn't ever committed to having High Templar in the army. And he kills a few Lings that were scouting, trying to harass. But Lings are really inconsequential at this point. Classic has a lot of Archons, which is going to be good against Hydra Ling, but really a lot of the other army units of Classic are not. Mass Speed Zealot is bad against Banelings because Speed Zealots are light units, and Banelings are very good against light units, especially clumped units that forcefully charge into the Zerg army. And if we look up, I mean, he has a lot of Zealots. That's really what he's relying on, other than the Archon. So if the Zealots die, the Immortals really won't be that good. Immortals are good against armored units. Hydras are light units, so are Lings, aka they're not armored. So Immortals really aren't that good, oddly enough. Warp Prism here being loaded with Zealots. This is extremely useful because you don't have to necessarily do a big warp in to harass with the Warp Prism. You can just load it with Speed Zealots, but Classic has it snuffed out. Of course, the Warp Prism flew right by Overlords. And the Protoss army is going to move into position to try to do some damage while Speed Zealots attack this top base. And Banelings are probably going to clean this up, and they do, as the base was narrowly saved. So Classic actually invested quite a bit into that. Now he's down in supply pretty badly. And if we look, the Zerg has a disgusting amount of units. 34 speed bands. Well, he had about 90 Lings, and he's making more bands, and he has almost 20 Hydras. So what is this army good against? Because he's about maxed on it. Well, it's good against players that make a lot of speed lots and don't have Storm or Colossi. And right now there's going to be a big engagement. I'm going to go into slow-mo here, actually, and we can see 3 force fields are going to go down, and the weakness of this Baneling Hydra army is going off of creep. And a few Banelings sneak through and trigger these Immortal shields, and this Archon might actually die. Once again, the upgrades they're favoring Zerg very heavily. +3 is not yet done. That's the crux of this Protoss army composition. And suddenly Banelings go into mineral lines. Holy crap. And 37 workers die. And Speed Zealots come forward to die into Banelings. I'm going to kick it back up to normal speed. And the Hydra Ling Bane force is going to absolutely crush that. And I'm going to have to rewind a bit. And we're going to watch that last fight at normal speed. So let's see what happens here. He has his Hydra Band. We're going to forward to the action. Okay, so here's a Speed Ling drop. Notice Crackling is being researched. Once that gets upgraded, these Ling drops will do an insane amount of damage. So here, a Baneling drop actually got off despite the cannon and killed 21 workers. Wow. And then here we see Banelings again ran over and killed a bunch of workers. So if we pause right there, 39 probes to 77 drones. So at this point, Classic only has 119 supply. And yeah, he has a lot of minerals, but he's kind of relying on Speed Zealots to get his mineral float down. And Speed Zealots are god-awful against Hydra, Ling, Bane when they're out upgraded. I mean, really, really bad. They're like the last thing you want to make. So nice harassment there from Dark, one of the best things he did in this game was set up multiple drops to happen right when he engaged. If you engage a Protoss right when they want you to, right at the front door, they will almost always be able to beat you with Zerg, especially if you're trying to engage off creep into force fields and into splash. That was kind of Classic's mistake here, as he didn't really have splash except for Archons. But Dark didn't do that. He said, well, sure, I'll push your front door with the dangerous army, but in reality, I'm going to be doing these drops. And if you don't defend against these drops, well, you'll lose the game. And even the best players, like Classic, who has won both a GSL and an SSL, are going to be hard-pressed to deal with an extremely dangerous speed baneling-based army that can just kill you if you mess up your force fields, and a drop at the third, and a drop in the main, all going on at the same time. And, you know, he has an observer over here, and there's a warp prism on the map that he could try to harass with, so there's a lot going on for Classic to deal with, and Dark can intelligently just set these drops up and not even have to micro them a lot while he pushes with his main army. So Dark did a great job. This is a best of 3, so these subsequent games will be up tomorrow. You need to subscribe and click the little bell logo, and if you've already subscribed, that's great. Good for you. I'm happy you did so. Make sure you like every video then, especially this one. And that'll do it.